She was best known as Archie Bunker's better half in the groundbreaking 70s sitcom All in the Family. Jean Stapleton died today of natural causes at the age of 90 at her home in New York.
Jean Stapleton is remembered as one of the most beloved actresses in American television history. Best known for her role as Edith Bunker in the groundbreaking sitcom All in the Family. But behind the laughter and applause was a woman with dreams, struggles, and even regrets that shaped her journey. Born on January 19, 1923, during a snowy morning in New York City, Jean was welcomed into a modest family. Her father, Joseph, worked in advertising, and her mother, Marie, was a talented soprano singer. From her earliest years, Jean was surrounded by creativity, though her family's life was far from glamorous. At just 3 years old, she began dancing lessons through her mother's determination, even though money was tight. Her first small performance, where she won a medal for her smile, gave her a taste of the stage and the power of performance. That moment sparked a lifelong passion. Yet, her family's financial struggles meant that every small success came with sacrifice. Her father once pawned his pocket watch just to buy her tap shoes, a gesture that stayed with her forever. From the very beginning, Jean's life was a mix of joy, ambition, and hardship. She grew up with the awareness that chasing dreams often required giving up something important. That truth would echo later in her career when she realized that fame, too, had its costs. Jean's early years were heavily shaped by the difficulties of the Great Depression. After the stock market crash in 1929, her father lost much of his work, and the family soon faced deep financial trouble. By 1931, they had to move into a tiny one-bedroom apartment on Amsterdam Avenue. The stress weighed heavily on her parents, and in 1932, when Jean was just 9, her father left the family home. His absence left a deep scar, forcing Jean and her mother to rely on each other for strength and survival. Her mother sang in churches for small payments, often $5 for a mass, and sometimes included Jean in duets to earn a little extra money. Though it was difficult, Jean's hardships built resilience in her. She found joy in school plays, even when she had to make costumes out of scraps or glue old posters together for outfits. During one play, when the set broke mid-performance, Jean improvised with a quick joke that had the audience roaring with laughter. That reaction made her realize she had a natural gift for comedy. She began to see the stage as her escape, a place where she could turn hardship into humor. These experiences shaped her ability to connect with audiences in an honest and heartfelt way. She learned early on that laughter was not just about jokes, it was about truth, struggle, and survival. The determination she built during these years carried her forward as she prepared to chase her dream of acting. As Jean grew older, her commitment to theater only grew stronger. At 16, she graduated from high school and began working as a typist at an advertising agency to help support her family. Even while working long hours, she enrolled in night classes at the American Theater Wing. She balanced both worlds, earning money by day and chasing her passion by night. Her natural timing, which she later credited to the rhythm of typing on a typewriter, became one of her greatest strengths on stage. By 18, she had officially chosen her stage name, Stapleton, after her mother's maiden name. She began landing auditions and slowly made her way into theater. One of her earliest breaks came when she worked as an understudy in Arsenic and Old Lace in Maine, where she not only acted but also helped backstage when needed. She proved she could survive the demands of professional theater, which often required long hours, quick changes, and endless energy. During World War II, Jean joined the USO, performing for soldiers at army bases. These shows tested her skills in front of tough crowds, often outdoors and under challenging conditions, but she learned to project her voice and hold attention. Those years sharpened her performance style, and her persistence began paying off with small roles on radio and later in Broadway productions. By the late 1940s, Jean had become a respected performer who had already shown she could take on both serious and comedic roles. She wasn't just an actress with dreams, she was proving she could make them real. The 1950s were a turning point in Jean's career. Though casting directors often overlooked her for leading roles, Saying she didn't fit the traditional glamorous image, Jean refused to change herself to meet expectations. Instead, she focused on playing roles that required humor, intelligence, and emotional depth. Her persistence paid off when she was cast in Bells Are Ringing in 1956, one of Broadway's most successful productions of the time. The show ran for nearly 1,000 performances, and Jean became known for her comic timing and natural presence. This success was followed by roles in other important productions, like Rhinoceros and Funny Girl. While she was never the star of these shows, her performances stood out for their authenticity. She also took risks outside Broadway, investing her own paychecks to save a struggling summer theater, which later became successful. This boldness showed her commitment not just to her own career but to theater as a whole. However, despite her growing reputation, Jean was still often seen as a supporting actress rather than a leading lady. Instead of letting this discourage her, she embraced it, believing that every role had value and every performance was a chance to leave a mark. These years on Broadway gave her the foundation she needed to eventually take on the role that would define her career forever. Edith Bunker. By the early 1960s, television had begun to reshape the entertainment industry, and Jean started taking small roles on popular shows like The Nurses, Route 66, and The Patty Duke Show. Though her appearances were brief, they introduced her to wider audiences and helped casting directors see her versatility. A particularly important moment came when she acted alongside Carol O'Connor in The Defenders in 1962. At the time, no one could have guessed that they would later become one of television's most iconic couples. Jean continued building her resume with guest spots, often playing warm, believable characters who added heart to every story. In 1970, her career changed forever when Norman Lear asked her to audition for a new sitcom. At first, she was considered for a smaller role, but her unique voice and mannerisms caught Lear's attention. During rehearsals, she created the high-pitched nasal sound that would become Edith Bunker's signature. She also studied Real Women in Queens, New York, to make Edith authentic, noting how they spoke, laughed, and interacted with their families. By the time All in the Family premiered in 1971, Jean was ready. At 48 years old day and age, when many actresses struggled to find works, she had landed the role of a lifetime. When All in the Family first aired, it immediately stood out from other sitcoms of the time. Instead of avoiding controversial topics, it leaned into them, addressing issues like racism, women's rights, and class struggles through the lives of Archie and Edith Bunker. Edith, played by Jean, was the heart of the show. While Archie barked and argued, Edith responded with kindness, patience, and quiet strength. What could have been a simple role of a submissive housewife became, in Jean's hands, a layered character who resonated with millions of viewers. One of the show's most powerful moments came in 1977, when Edith faced an attempted assault. Jean insisted the scene remain realistic, even contributing to the idea of Edith throwing a burning cake to defend herself. Episodes like this turned a sitcom into social commentary and showcased Jean's courage in tackling serious issues. She also influenced how Edith's character was written, pushing back against attempts to make her too simple or foolish. Jean believed Edith had depth, and she fought to portray her that way. Week after week, she showed audiences that kindness and humor could be powerful forms of strength. Over 8 seasons, Edith Bunker became a symbol of both comedy and quiet resilience. Jean used her real-life experiences to bring truth to difficult storylines. When the writers explored Edith's experience with menopause, Jean refused to let the episode be treated as a joke, demanding it be shown with honesty. When Edith found a lump in her breast, the storyline reflected real fear and courage. Inspired by Jean's own family history with cancer, these moments weren't just television, they were groundbreaking conversations that had never been seen before on American screens. Jean's performance won her 3 Emmy Awards and 2 Golden Globes. But more importantly, it won her a permanent place in television history. Despite the show's success, by 1979, Jean made the difficult decision to leave. She wanted to avoid being typecast forever as Edith, When Norman Lear begged her to stay, she reminded him that Edith was a fictional character, while she was a real actress who needed to move forward. It was a brave choice that many fans struggled to accept, especially when the show revealed Edith had died off-screen. Still, Jean knew it was the right decision for her career and her life. When All in the Family first premiered in 1971, it was unlike any sitcom that had come before. Up to that point, television had been careful, often portraying family life as cheerful, simple, and free of conflict. But Norman Lear wanted to use comedy as a tool for social commentary, bringing real-life arguments into America's living rooms. Topics like racism, sexism, politics, and class struggles were suddenly being discussed over dinner tables across the country because people had just watched Archie and Edith Bunker argue about them the night before. Jean Stapleton's performance was key to making the show successful. While Carol O'Connor's Archie often delivered biting insults and stubborn views, Edith softened the harshness, offering a balance of patience, kindness, and humor. She represented the average person watching at home, someone who may not have understood politics or social issues in complex terms, but who approached life with empathy and common sense. Jean often said that Edith was the soul of the show, while Archie was the voice. That balance made audiences feel safe enough to laugh, even when the topics were uncomfortable. In many ways, Jean's Edith helped open doors for sitcoms that came after, proving comedy could be both entertaining and socially meaningful. Her role showed that characters didn't need to be glamorous or flawless to be memorable. They needed to be real. While millions of viewers watched Edith Bunker each week, very few people knew what Jean Stapleton was like behind the camera. Cast and crew members often spoke about her humility and professionalism. She never demanded special treatment, never acted like a star, and often stayed late after filming to rehearse lines or help younger actors. One well-known story from the set involved Jean's decision to create Edith's famous high-pitched voice. Norman Lear originally imagined Edith sounding more like a typical housewife from Queens, but Jean felt the voice should reflect Edith's nervous energy and eagerness to please. She practiced different tones until she landed on the slightly nasal sing-song pitch that audiences instantly recognized. Carol O'Connor once admitted that during their first rehearsals, he couldn't stop laughing at her delivery because it was so unique. Another behind-the-scenes detail was Jean's wardrobe choices. She often worked with costume designers to make Edith's clothes slightly outdated, sometimes even wearing pieces from thrift stores, to show that the Bunkers were a working-class family living on a tight budget. These little touches made Edith believable, helping viewers feel like she could be their neighbor, aunt, or even their mother. One of the most powerful things about Jean Stapleton's portrayal of Edith was how she challenged viewers to rethink their assumptions about women, marriage, and family roles. On the surface, Edith seemed like the stereotypical submissive wife, soft-spoken, eager to please, and always ready to support her husband. But, as the series unfolded, Edith showed surprising moments of independence and strength. In several episodes, she stood up to Archie, refusing to let him insult their daughter, Gloria, or dismiss women's issues. In one memorable storyline, Edith takes a job outside the home, much to Archie's frustration. Instead of backing down, she calmly insists on her right to contribute and make her own choices. These storylines reflected the women's rights movement of the 1970s and helped normalize conversations about gender equality. Many women watching at home saw themselves in Edith, kind, patient, and devoted, but also capable of growth and self-discovery. Jean often received letters from fans thanking her for showing that ordinary women had value and strength. For many viewers, Edith wasn't just a character, she was a role model. Unlike many celebrities, Jean Stapleton never embraced the Hollywood spotlight. Even at the peak of her fame, she avoided red carpets, rarely gave personal interviews, and refused to let her private life become a media story. Instead, she lived quietly with her husband William and their children in Pennsylvania. She commuted long distances for work, choosing stability for her family over the glamour of Los Angeles. This choice sometimes puzzled her colleagues. who couldn't understand why she would turn down opportunities that could have made her even more famous. But Jean valued balance. She once explained in an interview